Great look, Vince. It's Mailbag Night, IB Nation Sports Talk. Glad to have you with us here tonight. We were just looking at some of the questions popping in as we were sitting backstage getting ready to start the show. Glad to have you with us here tonight. Of course, we've changed the schedule around a little bit.
Yes.
This week. Mailbag is usually on Wednesday, not on Tuesday, but we're doing it today because there is no show tomorrow. And that's because we're finally going to get to talk to some of the offensive newcomers, predominantly players like Sam Hartman is going to be there. Have you seen the list, Vince?
I didn't study it, but yes, I did. And Sam Hartman was the first name on the list, if I'm not mistaken.
But and you were bent out of shape a week or so ago about whether or not we were going to get to talk to these new offensive assistants, and
they're both
Gino
on there.
Guidugli and Joe Rudolph are both going to be there tomorrow as well.
You are correct, but they didn't get their own press conference, so I feel like the truth lies someplace in between for us. I'm not willing to take defeat on this.
I mean, we get more up close and personal when it's a non-press conference setting. Now, granted, they'll cut it off a little bit earlier, but just depending on how they keep things moving. They're also gonna slide a couple defensive guys at On Schuler, Drake Bowen.
That's true.
They're going to be there as well because they missed the defensive newcomers thing. I don't know exactly why, but they weren't there, so they're bringing them. I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys there tomorrow. So
yeah, there are.
Hopefully, I can get it all.
I don't know how you're going to make it happen, dude. If I'm being honest, I don't know how you're going to get all the audio that you need to get. But good luck.
You're probably right about that, but we're going to get Gino and Joe. So excited about that.
Gino, Joe, and Sam. Those are the three that you need to get.
That's right. And so that means on Thursday's show, our listeners are going to get to hear from those guys. We'll have some audio, some comments. We'll talk all about some things that we hear at Wednesday's media session. That'll be on Thursday's show, which will be Vince and I. And then Vince and I will also have the Rapid Fire show Friday because Jesse is going to be driving back from Cleveland to South Bend on Friday for a little weekend thing. His birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks. His sister has a thing this Saturday that he and his girlfriend always come back to town for. So that's going to be going on. So looking forward
going on
to
in the Stiers household. Holy smokes!
Yeah, that's right.
I got a Sweet 16 coming up that I got to deal with.
Oh boy!
They probably don't call that for boys, but whatever.
But this is just your second. Oh, that's right. He is. I was thinking he was a little bit older than 16, but he's a sophomore in high school.
He's a young sophomore, right? So because his birthday's just like Jesse. So so he's turning 16, which means we're on the doorstep of freedom for the driver's license, mainly for me. So I don't have to drive him back and forth to practices. Can only imagine what that feels like. Like, hey, you got practice. You better move moving along. Don't get in the car with me. Go do your thing. Cannot wait.
Yes, I bet. You'll go from chauffeuring one to, you're already chauffeuring everybody right now. So,
but
you've got many years until your chauffeuring days are done.
Correct. But he requires the most chauffeuring.
That's true because he's in high school and social activities and sports.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I don't know if I told you, we're just airing out our dirty laundry here. He's got an avulsion fracture. Do you know what that is?
What is that?
He broke his hip.
Oh man, no kidding.
Yeah, so his tendon pulled off a piece of his hip. And so he is non-weight bearing for a month, which cuts right into track season, which he was a state qualifier for last year as a freshman.
Man, that stinks.
It stinks big time. So
I was going to say, I would think that he might have to miss the whole track season for something like that.
Close to it. And if everything goes according to plan, he'll be good to go for the postseason. But everything has to go right
Still
on
got
money.
To get 100% and healthy and all that stuff.
So
I hope things go well. That stinks.
Yeah.
Hey, you hadn't told me that.
So now everybody knows. But, whoops.
Yeah.
Who cares about HIPAA? Doesn't matter.
That's right. Just share it with the world. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no big deal.
Okay, so it's mailbag night. So get in your questions. We've got a few coming in here.
Got some good ones.
I told Vince to be prepared for baseball, and one of the first questions that came in was a baseball question. We'll get
Nailed
to that.
it.
We'll try to hit a couple of these football questions first. Who are the front runners to replace Brian Mason as special teams coach? Who would you like to see them hire? I mean, it's pretty much Marty Biaggi, right?
Yeah, that's I've heard like 3 different pronunciations, so I'm not 100% sure which way to go with it, but it sounds like he kind of came in second last time around when Brian Mason was hired, and he's got some gigantous shoes to fill, obviously. And frankly, and I was thinking about this, Sean, on the way home today. I was listening to another podcast. They were talking about this, and I feel like Brian Mason had big shoes to fill as well if he would have stuck around, because he set the bar very, very high for himself in year number 1, right? With the block kicks and just the single.
There was a lot to live up to, is what you're saying. Not necessarily shoes to fill, but a lot to live up to.
A lot to live up to. So even in year 2, like I wonder if he would have stuck around. I think we all agree that things would have been really good, but would they have been as good as 22, even with Brian Mason here? I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's what I said last night, that I would like to have seen, kind of basically what you're talking about, seeing him stay for a couple of years and see what it looked like over a longer period of time instead of just one and done.
Right. I mean, he capitalized on his 1 year at Notre Dame. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he parlayed that into a job, in the NFL, which is awesome. I mean, congratulations to him. He gets to go home. His wife gets to go home, which pretty sure that was the deciding factor in that decision. But hey, we all understand how that works. But it stinks that he's leaving. But it would have been, like I said, the second act would have been very difficult to repeat, in my opinion. So I feel like this new guy, he's being compared to almost mythological standings. You know what I mean? Can he live up to that? That's going to be a big question mark. I don't even know.
There's huge shoes to fill, no doubt. And Jesse and I went through all the numbers last night in terms of what Mason did, what Biaggi has done. Now, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I did
I've heard a soft G, like Biaggi. I don't know.
Now,
whatever.
I was going to say, now, whose pronunciations have you listened to? Now, no offense to our boss, but I've noticed he's really bad. He's not on the DP level, but he's really bad at name pronunciations. like even some names that the rest of, I'm not going to call him out on specific names, but he whiffs on some pronunciations.
That's fair. That's fair. I should look it up, to see if I can find a pronunciation guide. Of course, I put what's his first name?
Well, like I said, I found one and it said Biaggi, and that's what I was going with.
So it's like Mr. Miyagi. I'll never forget that one.
Now, again, it's like you're reading it, so it's still somewhat open to interpretation, I think, even when you read a pronunciation. Because that's something I've noticed. Like when you do a sport, like women's basketball, for example, the teams all in their notes, they're supposed to put pronunciations in there. Right. Some of them are just, they overthink when they spell things phonetically, and it's like, well, that's not really how you would write it phonetically. I kind of get what you're saying, but that's not really how you would write it phonetically, because it's still the way you wrote it. There's some interpretation in there.
So. That's the worst part about doing any kind of play-by-play, PA, etc., is pronunciations, and finding somebody who actually knows what the pronunciations are.
And that's the thing too. Especially if you're doing high school stuff, you can ask a parent, you can ask 2 different parents, and they would tell you 2 completely different things, right? Mm-hmm. Or even a coach sometimes, or a player. Nobody knows so then you ask the kid, and it's like, well, it's this, but you can call me that if you want. I don't.
It's like, okay, well, that's not helpful, but okay. Right. See, I can get away with it as a PA guy. It's loud, over the speaker kind of a thing, kind of run it together, and most of the time people aren't going to understand that you just butchered the kid's name. But you cannot get away with it when you're doing play-by-play. Because you say the name over and over again, and it can be very difficult.
Right. We always try. We always try our best.
Yes.
Anthony asks if the Tyler Buckner in the South Carolina game, minus the red zone turnover, improves in the offseason, do you still believe Hartman starting is a given? 45 points in a lot of positions in a game at Notre Dame.
I would say that it's not a given. Like, I think we all anticipate that Sam Hartman is going to be the starter just because of the situation going out to get him. He's only got 1 year eligibility. Why would they bring him in? Blah, 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 blah. But I don't think it's a given. I will say that. I think there is going to be a competition. Now, there's been a competition the past couple of years. I think we've all known kind of the way those competitions were going to go. I think we know how this is going to go. But I do think it's going to be open to some interpretation as the spring goes on. They may name a starter in the middle of spring. We don't know. But I think it's absolutely a possibility because, look, I'm not going to hide the fact that I think Tyler Buckner has the opportunity to be a really good quarterback. We saw a lot of the pluses in that South Carolina, in the bowl game. Saw a lot of the minuses as well, right? And if he can get some of those minuses cleaned up, and I think consistent playing time would do that, right? Then, yeah, I think it's going to be a competition. Again, at the end of the day, I still believe Sam Hartman is probably going to win that competition. My hope is that Tyler Buckner sticks around, has another 2 years to start, and Notre Dame is just chugging along quarterback to quarterback, right? And then you hand it over to Minchie your car. Like, that's a great succession plan if you're a Notre Dame fan, in my opinion. So I think Tyler Buckner is going to give Sam Hartman all he can handle in the offseason. I do.
I think it's going to be a competition. I think it's good, just like you were talking about. And yeah, they've had competitions the last couple of years. I was surprised in both cases at how quickly the competition was pronounced closed. So it was a competition in name. How true the competition was, I don't know. Or did they just, think that they clearly saw one better than the other? And to me, you're bringing in a guy with all the experience Sam Hartman has. Yeah, they're going to compete for the job. That's what the spring is about. I fully expect pretty even reps, I would think, throughout the spring, because that's when you can afford to give extra reps and compare them. Let them run the exact same plays right after each other and see who runs them better. But I still think that even as the guy who is already at Notre Dame, Tyler Buckner is the less experienced guy, and he still has more growth to do. I think that Tyler Buckner has to clearly be better than Hartman for Buckner to end up being the quarterback.
Sure.
Like if it's 50-50 or, if it's fairly even, you go with the guy with the experience. That's why you brought him in here to begin with.
Absolutely. And Crystal actually makes a really good point. I want to throw it up here. She says, oh,
sorry.
That's okay.
Hartman I thought I was getting rid of the other one that we just had.
You're all good. Hartman has never had a talent like Buckner behind him, pushing him. I think that's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And if it goes the way we think it'll go, then Tyler Buckner's going to push Sam Hartman to be even better. And that's a win-win if you're a Notre Dame fan. So, I would also love for there to be some way to get Tyler Buckner on the field. And again, we've talked about this 100 times, Sean. That just needs to be a very defined situation. So everybody's on board. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that if this happens, then Tyler's coming in the game. And then if something different happens, then Hartman comes back in. Whatever it is, that way it's expected. It's not he's not playing well, let's get him in for his limited package. Like, that doesn't work, in my opinion. I want to see Tyler Buckner on the field, plain and simple, because I think that gives Notre Dame the best opportunity to win. So let's see what happens. I think there's a lot of options here for Jared Parker. I will say that. Look at what
Brent says. Hartman starts or he's gone. Additionally, we could lose TB12 and CJ Carr.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, if Hartman doesn't start, then TB12 is the one starting.
Yeah.
And CJ Carr isn't even here yet, so it doesn't affect him in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So I don't think one begets the rest. And if they don't name Sam Hartman the starter in the spring, okay, they're not going to name a starter until well into fall practice.
Or
Sam Hartman's not going
at least a week into fall practice.
But Sam Hartman's not going to go anywhere a week into fall practice because he's got nowhere to go.
Right.
So he's not going to leave. is the point that I'm making.
Right.
Like, if they name, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if they named Tyler Buckner the starter in spring. That would
nobody's going to be named the starter in the spring.
I agree with that completely. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Salty. Buy or sell having a quarterback coach who is also not a coordinator will make Guidugli a more impactful hire / promotion than that of Parker, Rudolph, or presumably Biaggi. So because he's not a coordinator, just a quarterback coach, does that make him a more impactful hire than these other guys? Is that how I'm reading this?
He's not more impactful than Jared Parker because Jared Parker's in charge of the entire offense. I mean, it makes the quarterback coach, the quarterback position coach, I guess, more impactful, maybe, because that's his only gig. And I think everybody would be on the same page to say that quarterback development hasn't been great over the past 5 or 6 years. So is it impactful? Yes. I can't get on board that it's more impactful than the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he can have, I agree with what you're saying, but he can definitely have more impact on the overall development of all the quarterbacks. So if Salty considers that more impactful, okay, I can see that. But I agree with what you're saying because Parker is the offensive coordinator. He's going to have his hands on everything, obviously. But I do like the fact, whether it's more impactful or not, I do like the fact that now you're going to have a quarterback coach focused on working with all the quarterbacks who doesn't have the responsibility of game planning and all these different things that he'll have more time to work with the other quarterbacks on the roster. So, I do like that. Whether or not it's more or less impact, I don't know, but
sure.
I tend to agree with kind of what you're saying. Because Parker is the coordinator, he's still going to have more overall impact because of all the things that he's going to touch.
The word impact is the key thing here, right? I mean, he's going to be impactful over the entire offense and not just the quarterback. And of course, everybody would say, well, if the quarterback doesn't play well, then the entire offense doesn't do well. Yeah, agreed. But the offensive coordinator still has more impact on the offense.
Yeah. Brent, why would IB Nation believe Jared Parker can exceed expectations from last year? I, for one, am very skeptical, says Brent. You think about that.
Well, I would say he's got better tools to work with. Number one, he's got an offensive backfield that this time last year is more talented than the one that is going to be there this year. And a year older Logan Diggs, a year older Audric Estime, a year older Joe Alt and Fisher and Zeke Correll. Like, you've got better talent there. Tight end obviously is a drop off, but you've got better talent at wide receiver than you had a year ago. So you've got better talent to work with than Tommy Rees had to even work with. I like some of the philosophy choices of Jared Parker from what I understand that he is about and how he's going to go about teaching the offense. I think it will allow the athletes on the offensive side of the ball to reach their potential faster and at a more consistent pace than the philosophy that Tommy Rees had as the offensive coordinator. It's not about the perfect play. It's about understanding where you need to be and what you need to do on a smaller scale, which allows you to go out and produce. So I like that better offensively, and there's better tools to work with. So,
yeah, I mean, I like the things that we've heard from Jared Parker, but, to the skepticism Brent has, I still got to see it. I don't know if I'm skeptical, but I've got to see it. Because we haven't seen anything yet. We don't know exactly what Jared Parker is going to look like as a full-fledged offensive coordinator, and that's, again, like skepticism, pessimistic pessimism. I don't know. One of those. Like, I don't know if I would go that far, but I'm at the very least, I need to see something. And that's why I hope we at least get to see, a couple live practices in the spring to get an idea of what this is going to look like. But who knows if we will.
We still haven't gotten that information, and spring practice is right around the corner. And so who knows? and that's frustrating.
So Vince thinks they're going to hide everything from us, and come on, Vince. You know how it's the 7th. We're like, what, 15 days away. We're still 2 weeks away. You know, we've gone right down to the wire.
You're right.
Like 2 days before spring practice starts, that's when we get the schedule.
And it's frustrating as all get out because some of us have lives that we need to rearrange in order to
be in those lives.
Practices.
Come on, what are you talking about? Who has lives? What I love is like when you're planning on going, over to practice, you're leaving at 7:30, and then while you're driving there, you get the email saying it's been pushed, a half hour,
right?
One way, and it's like, okay, great.
Well, my favorite, and it doesn't affect me in any way, but it affects you and pretty much everybody else on the beat, is the ones where you get to watch warm-ups and then like 5 minutes of drill work, and then you got to stick around for the entire practice in order to get audio from the guys that are coming out after practice.
Right.
But you don't get to watch practice. You have to sit in the media room. Like, wow.
Or you go to Martin's and work on some notes or whatever.
I don't know. I realize we got to do whatever they tell us to do, and I get it. We should be happy with whatever we get, but that's annoying.
Yeah. On that subject, when does spring ball begin and end? When is the spring game? I believe it's March 22nd, I think is the start date, and April 22nd. So it's exactly 1 month. They're going to cram a lot into a month this year. They're not going to spread it out like they've done before. It's going to be concentrated like a can of orange juice, and they're going to go, boom, hit you with it.
Yeah.
Get it all in 4 weeks. Looking forward to it.
It's going to be very interesting.
It'll be done before the draft, which is good as well. Ooh. Because a couple of years ago, you remember the spring game and the draft were going on the same weekend, which was brutal. Yes.
I haven't been to a spring game in a really, really long time because it usually fell on a doubleheader or something that I had going on for baseball.
That's true.
I don't have baseball this year, but I may not have track either. I don't know as a parent, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Jeff wants to know, popular question last year when Notre Dame was playing a team they should have beaten like a drum. What is your confidence level they'll actually do it? What will be a question next year, or is that behind them?
Well, so let's do this, Sean. Let's turn it into kind of a rapid fire scale of 1 to 10. Your confidence level that they're going to beat the teams they should beat handily, cover the spread, so to speak. Where do you fall on that scale of 1 to 10, your confidence level? So for me, I'm going to say for my scale of 1 to 10, my confidence level that Notre Dame is actually going to do what they're supposed to do against these teams. I mean, we're going from Brian Kelly, who beat the teams he was supposed to, and then looked terrible against the teams that he wasn't supposed to, the tougher teams, the top 5, the top 10 teams, right? I think Marcus Freeman is going to get them to a place where they should be able to do that. So I'm going to put it at like a 6.5 to 7 because I still have to see it. And I have not had an opportunity to see that yet. I mean, because I think we can all agree that Notre Dame should have beaten Marshall and Stanford and should have beaten them like a drum, as the question says. So it's like a 6.5 to 7 for me.
That's probably where I am. I mean, it's really my biggest question with Marcus Freeman going into the season is that a thing of the past, or is that going to be a continuing theme for a year or two? I mean, it held them back from being in a New Year's Six Bowl. If they take care of those 2 games that they're supposed to, they're playing in a New Year's Six Bowl instead of down at the Gator Bowl. And it's a big difference in paychecks for one thing. It's also a big difference in, stature and things like that for your program. And it's the biggest question. You beat the heck out of Clemson, but you lose those games. So yeah, my confidence right now, because all we have is what we just, last year to go on, and they blew it. So let's see what happens going into the, people are talking about NC State and, all that kind of stuff, that's what we've got to see. So my confidence is in the same range, around a 6.5 or a 7, just because We don't know. I mean, there's nothing tangible. You're going to go in with a less experienced offensive coordinator now. That's going to be a factor. You've still got, pretty much the same defense and everybody on the defensive side of the ball. So is that going to take a step up? Like that's a factor. So that's what he's got to prove. He's got to prove, like the early portions of Brian Kelly's career, obviously that was an issue. Is that going to be an issue for Marcus Freeman? Is it going to be a continuing theme, or is that a thing of the past? To me, that's the biggest question right now.
It's a huge question mark, Sean. I do believe that Notre Dame will compete with the really good teams on their schedule. I do. I believe that. I believe Marcus Freeman will do a good job of getting his teams ready for those kinds of games. It's can he get them ready for the crap that they got to slog through. And the first 3 games of the season are going to give us a bit of an answer to that question, because they should blow out the first 3 teams on their schedule. Shouldn't be.
And if they don't, people are going to be very, very wringing their hands and worry.
Yes. And if they don't,
justifiably so.
If they drop one of those 3 games and then beat Ohio State, it's like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. It'll be one of those kind of things.
Then you're an inconsistent program, right?
Right. Absolutely. In the worst way. Way.
Exactly. Okay. So we just did that one. There was one that I just saw here a second ago.
I've been starring like crazy, so you should have some options in there.
I'll just go ahead and answer this. Sean, do you do radio or color broadcast for Notre Dame women's basketball? I do. Ant-VR. I am the play-by-play announcer for Notre Dame women's basketball. That is I.
That is you.
I don't know what else I can expand upon.
Which is why I listen to it on the Odyssey app and sync it up with my TV and listen to the dulcet tones of Sean Stiers and the women's basketball team.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll go ahead and answer this one. How long is Adon Schuler supposed to be out of commission? We get to talk to him at the media session tomorrow, so we will find out. We will have a definite answer for that, hopefully.
Yep.
Yes. All right. You pick one, Vince.
Oh, the power.
I'll let you pick one this time.
The power. All right, here we go. From our buddy Salty Virginia Peanuts. If the freshman wide receivers and running backs play to their potential, as well as the O-line and the tight ends, it's a lot of ifs, by the way, Salty, will the most effective QB ultimately be Hartman, Buckner, Minchie, or Carr? Well, Carr's not eligible. He's still in high school. So he's off the list with that one. But I will say, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that this offense in general is going to be more effective with Sam Hartman at the helm. He's going to be able to spread the ball around. He's experienced. He can push the ball downfield. I just do. That doesn't mean I don't believe in Tyler Buckner. I still believe the offense can be dynamic with him at the helm. But I think for this year, you don't go out and get Sam Hartman if you don't think he's going to be your starter, right? I mean, you just
I think, like, if to the first part of this, if the freshman receivers and running backs play to their potential, and then he says as well as the O-line tight ends, I think it's because you've got an experienced quarterback who is helping them play to their potential. Whereas last year you had obviously a very inexperienced quarterback who was so up and down, who did not allow some of those guys to play to their potential. Like he allowed Michael Mayer to play his potential, but not much else. So I think if those guys are, especially since we're talking about freshmen, if they're playing to their potential next year, it's because they've got a veteran quarterback who's a big part of that.
Yep, who brings them along. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, I think that's one of the biggest pluses of having Sam Hartman on your team is he can bring those guys along. He knows what it's like. He's been starting for like 4 years. This is his 5th year, literally starting because of the COVID year, right? So he's got tons of experience under his belt. And at the end of the day, as much as I like and enjoy watching Tyler Buckner do his thing, because I enjoy him as a quarterback. I really like Tyler Buckner, if people haven't figured that out yet. I think sitting out this year and watching Sam Hartman lead and do the things that he's about to do for Notre Dame is going to be better for him in the long run. And he'll be able to be a better quarterback after Sam Hartman leaves.
I concur. I think that it's going to be a big part of his development. It's something that, like he had Jack Cohn, but he only had Jack Cohn for a year. I think that this can really help him. Now, I still think that means he needs to find the field in spurts.
Yes, I agree completely.
Call it package or whatever. He still needs to be on the field to some extent. He doesn't just need to be a true number 2 where he's standing there. They need to find a way to work him in to some different spots. Anthony, shocked that you like TB12.
I think he's joking, and I'll take it as joking. But I will also say it's TB12 Notre Dame, not the other TB12 who's currently retired.
Right. I'm going to look up something here in a second, but in the meantime,
I'm going to pick one out, or you got one?
Here, I'll throw this one in from Sean. If it was your first time attending Notre Dame for a football game, how would you go about visiting the famous sites?
Well, if it was, so there's a couple different ways to go about this, right? So if it's a 3:30 game, let's call it a 3:30 game because that's kind of the classic start time at Notre Dame, right? I mean, that's the mid-afternoon. You got to get all morning. I would get to campus as early as possible, okay? And if you don't have a parking pass, you're going to have to get there early anyway to park and walk. I would go in October, okay? Early October. You can see the leaves and all the fun stuff that Northern Indiana has to offer for like a 2-week period. So I would get to campus early. I would walk around, take it in. Back in the day when I was on campus, I would go and we would walk and listen. Like people would have their music playing out of their dorm rooms, and you could visit the various dorms that have food and all of those different things.
Are you just saying things that
I think you're gone again, my friend. You're probably saying something mean about me anyway. So Sean's going to go and come back. I would get there as early as possible. Okay. And then I would hit all the sites around and make yourself have plenty of time to take in the ambiance and everything else. Don't try to jam it all in. Enjoy it. Soak it up. That's what I would do. You hit the library. You hit, touchdown Jesus. You hit the first down Moses. You do all of those different, hit the bookstore before it gets too crowded. All of those different things. I would do as many of those things as you possibly could. And then just walk up and down the tailgating aisles too, because there's going to be a ton of people that are just going to hand you food, hand you beverages, all of those different things. It's awesome. A game day in October on a beautiful day is just one of the best feelings and the best ways to spend your day. So that's what I would do. We'll see if Sean has something else to say whenever he rolls back in, but I will take this one from Breakies, and I think it was kind of mentioned in the chat as well. He says, any news on Justin Scott? There was a post by our boy Sean Davis on the board. I believe he interviewed him after a basketball game. And there's some good stuff in there. And so if you're not a member of the board, this is a great opportunity to sign up right here, boards.irishbreakdown.com, and check out that post because there is some good information in there, which I was happy to read about. So I would check that out. Anthony is saying hit the grotto, the basilica, all of it. I mean, just walk around campus and soak it in. I think that's the best way to go about doing things if you're on campus for the very first time, for sure. We got a super chat here from Anthony. Thank you very much, Anthony. Really appreciate that. Says, Vince, say hello to higher insurance rates. Best of luck to your son on his recovery. Thank you. Number one, I hope he listens to the doctor and doesn't do anything for the next, I guess he's a week in, so another 4 weeks. And we can reevaluate and go from there. But the insurance rates thing, I am really not looking forward to. As a reminder, I am a father of 5. And so those insurance rates are going to go up and they're never going to come down, basically, because he's my oldest. And he is going to be helping with that, though. he is going to be a part of this. He's going to get a job and he's going to help out and do the things that he's supposed to do to make sure that he can still drive and be a functional member of this family. So he will help financially to make sure that things are moving along smoothly, for sure. See if we got some other questions we can jump into here. D-Rock wants to know when the portal reopens. Hey, Sean, welcome back.
Hey, thanks.
I can hear you. Yes.
That's like what I was searching for when my microphone went bad. I wanted to make sure it is May 1st. It's May 1st through the 15th.
Okay.
Is the next transfer portal window.
Good. So it's not in the middle of spring practice, which is probably a good thing.
Right.
For
Notre after Dame. Spring practice. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So that is good. We were kind of rolling through some of these starred questions. I believe you were chastising me when your mic went out. You're more than welcome to go back to that if you would like.
Well, it just seemed like you were just saying a bunch of stuff. It's like I would go to the grotto for sure, right? Okay. Like, I don't know if you mentioned that. I mean,
eventually.
Obviously, you go to the administration building, which is the Golden Dome. You know, you get your token picture in front of Touchdown Jesus, like everybody does, where you got your hands in the air. But, you know, also make sure and get a little bit closer and check out the reflection pool and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, like you said, make sure that you're there like later October, mid to late October is the best because the leaves are turning. Yes. Campus, it's like the best this town looks all year. I know that's right? I'm reaffirming what you said. Go to the Knights of Columbus, get a steak sandwich, you know, like ask somebody, hey, where's the Knights of Columbus? And you'll kind of get pointed in the right. It's in the middle of one of the quads over there, I think, right?
Great food.
It's been a while since I've been there.
I think it's by the old bookstore, right? Isn't that where they usually do it? I think that's where the Knights of Columbus are. So I'm sure they built a new building there now. That you remember the old bookstore, don't you? That little itty bitty building.
Well, I never went in there, but I remember. Yeah,
I don't know when they built. I don't know
where it was. Yeah.
So it might have been before you moved to town. God, that makes me old. Holy.
It was because by the time I moved here, you know, the big
one,
shiny new bookstore was there. So, and that's been
maybe I was going there as a kid. I didn't.
It's been almost 23 years ago. So I don't know exactly when they built it, but that's the one that was in use by the time I got to town. So,
wow. But yeah, so I believe
that is where fly through some questions. This queue is almost cleaned out.
That's what we do, man. Some of them were easy though. Like some of them were pretty easy.
All right. Well, Anthony's got a couple in here. Who do you think will be the next men's basketball coach? Who would you prefer? You know, like if this was 3 years ago, Porter Mosier would be the one I think that everyone would prefer. But, you know, even though his name has come up a couple of times, Oklahoma's already extended him like through 2028, and he's making $2.8 million a year. So
that's not going to happen in Notre Dame.
I just don't see that happening. Like because again, you're talking contract buyouts and 2.8 a year. I don't see them paying anybody $2.8 million a year walking in the door. I just don't see that.
Not a chance.
The name that I've heard probably the most is the Colgate coach, Langle. Okay. And, you know, he's won some he's won, I think, maybe 4 straight conference championships out there, taking them to the NCAA tournament, obviously. As a result, he's like 45 years old. I could see that being the sort of the mold of who they go after. Somebody, like I've said before, not a big name, not a household name by any means, but a guy who's got a track record of some success, and it's obviously a private school and all that kind of stuff. I could see that being the mold of who that, you know, they would go after in this thing.
Yeah, that would make sense. I was actually talking to my in-laws last night. We were driving home from the sectional championship game for high school around here, and the topic came up. They're season ticket holders. You know, they like to go to all the games, and like, what have you heard? I'm like, nothing. They're all still coaching. And I said, what's going to happen is, you know, they're going to get somebody from a quote unquote no name school. So like a group of 5,
a mid-major,
a mid-major. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
They're going to get a mid-major coach. You've never heard of them before. And I was, of course, speaking to my in-law. You've never heard of them before. You've probably never heard of the school before, because that's what Notre Dame is going to do. And we kind of talked about where the men's team ranks amongst everybody else on campus. And, obviously it's football. And then in my opinion, it's women's basketball, and then maybe men's basketball, if I'm being honest. And it'll show in their coaching search. That's how I feel. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. And I don't know what the approach is to tickets, but, like we were kind of ribbing it a little bit when Mike Bray was having his last home game, and, they were obviously selling tickets at bargain basement prices.
Yes,
I would like to see that. I realize they're not going to, men's and women's tickets are not going to go for the same amount. And yes, the women's basketball tickets are a lot cheaper than the men's, because they're targeting a different demographic than they are with men's basketball. They're targeting families and, and let's face it, like people, closer to my age demographic and that kind of thing, where they're trying to get, but, like the family aspect of it from the women's marketing, which really started around 20 some years ago, I think it's paid off. Because like a lot of young kids have grown up going to those games. And I think as a result, they become young adults and they still follow Notre Dame women's basket. Now, obviously the success helps them. But my point is, I would like to see the men's, considering what the men's program is, especially right now with the success, I'd like to see them maybe drop those ticket prices a little bit. Now, I don't know what they're going to pay the next coach, that'll factor into this as well. But I've always thought, if you lowered those a little bit and made them a little less premium, you might actually get more people in there on a consistent basis. I'm not, again, I'm not saying lower them to the women's basketball prices, because again, different demographics and all that stuff. Maybe bring them down a little bit, try to get people there and get them interested in that product again, because I think that's going to be part of this process, is you've got to get people interested in men's basketball again, considering the place to which it has fallen in these last few years.
I mean, it's not to the level that it was when Mike Bray took over. Okay.
Not even close.
It's not. And which is a testament to Mike Bray and what he was able to do. Right. But it's not in a good shape. Like there could be almost a completely new roster this time next year. Completely. Because obviously you're losing all the seniors that were there, who, it's funny, my mother-in-law was like, how come they didn't honor all the seniors? Because they did it last year. Like,
right.
They've been here so long.
Yeah, because they didn't know all these guys were coming back.
Right. Yeah. They've been here so long that they honored all those guys last year, and they only honored the one guy, with Marcus Hammond, I believe, this year. So all those guys are going to be gone. And then you've got the possible transfer or NBA jump or whatever of the young guys and the guys on the bench. Like, this could be a completely different roster. So this is not going to be a quick turnaround, in my opinion. Now, is it easier to turn around a basketball program than like a football program? Yeah, of course. You can go get one or two guys, but that's not realistic at Notre Dame to go get those guys.
Yeah, I mean,
turn a whole program around.
They're going to have to go out and get, either a bunch of grad transfers or, see if they can get some undergrad type guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's because you've got one guy in your incoming freshman class right now, and then you've got all those guys leaving. So someone's going to have to come in and fill those spots, unless they're going to get, hold walk-on tryouts, and it's going to be a bunch of walk-ons out there. Whew. Man.
I wonder if Tom Noy has any eligibility left. He's at all the games anyway.
Yeah.
Put the chucker in.
Might as well. That's right. That's right. Chi-Town, any unemployed retired coaches that Notre Dame should or that you'd like to see them hire as an analyst? I mean, I think a lot of people would like Cutcliffe. I mean, he's the one that comes to mind. I don't know who else.
The one you hear about a lot. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me, because watching film and breaking down film and all of those different things, that's an art, to be honest with you. There's guys that can do it and there's guys that can't. And there's guys out there that can do it that you have no idea who they are.
Well,
those are the guys I want.
You know how
once again, I think we have lost Sean Steyer's audio. And so we will see him go and see him come back, which would be awesome. And let me see. Brent Smith has an interesting question. He says, where should I search for Notre Dame home game tickets given I live in California? Any possibility Ohio State tickets are still available and how much? Here's what I'll tell you, Brent. They have not even done the season tickets for next year yet. And like I said, my in-laws are season ticket holders and they haven't even given them the availability for those just yet. So season tickets are still available. So I would assume single game tickets will be available. You just got to call the box office. I mean, they'll sell them to you. The prices will be crazy, but they'll definitely sell them to you. So they're definitely not sold out yet. That's for sure. They're definitely not sold out yet.
This is so annoying. This is this
kidding.
happened about a month or so ago with Jesse and I. So here I am.
Incredibly annoying. Welcome back.
And Derek is right. I was about to make a great point.
Yes, please do.
What Bill Belichick does, like when he brings in these young assistants, is like he sticks them in a room and has them crunch film, and it's like and that's how these guys work their way up the ladder in Bill Belichick New England Patriot land. I think like Matt Patricia was a guy who started like that, and there are other guys who have who started like that and worked their way up. They start off as analysts, and all they are doing is breaking down every single play of every single game, and that is their test. He gives them X amount of time, as kind of their entry test, and see how they do. And if they do well, they stay on, and that's literally all they do all season long. Is they just continue to crunch film day after day, week after week.
And I'm telling you, it's an art. You have to be really good at it, and you have to have a passion for it in order to do that day after day after day after day. I don't enjoy breaking down film, if I'm being honest. I don't. I know some people. I had a former head coach that I worked for. He lives and breathes breaking down just film. Love it. He just loves it. And it was great because he would ask me he could break it down. He'd ask me questions. Hey, do you see this, what I'm seeing? I would look at it. Yeah, I see that. That kind of a thing. Like, I understand how to do it. I just don't enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Brian loves breaking down film. My old head coach enjoyed, people love it. They enjoy it. They're really good at it. It's tough to find those guys, if I'm being honest. It just is. I like the on the field, coaching side of coaching as opposed to the breaking down of film.
Yes. Anthony, impressions of the Notre Dame baseball team 2 weeks into this. It's actually 3 weeks into the season now. What do you expect the rest of the season? Do you have any thoughts on this, Vince?
I do. I have a couple general thoughts, right? So I believe they're 5-4. They have won 2 out of 3 of their series, I believe. Off the top of my head, I did a little research earlier. Thanks to Sean.
About that. They lost 2 out of 3 to Lipscomb, and then they won their last 2 series against UAB and UNC Greensboro.
As a Cubs fan, I'm always like, okay, just win the series. Just win the series. That's the small term, right? Win the series, right? You can't be like that in baseball. It's great that you win the series, but there are so few games that if you only win 2/3 of your games, that's a problem. You're not going to go anywhere really doing that, right?
Right.
So
now, if you do it once you get into ACC play, that's different.
That's more beneficial. I agree.
Which actually.
Yep. So they start ACC play this coming weekend. They've got Georgia Tech down in Atlanta, and I'm very interested to see what they do in ACC play. That will tell me what kind of team this is. They kind of went about things a little bit differently in the preseason than they ever done before. A lot of times they're doing these one-gamer tournaments. They had a tournament in Texas that they would go to. They had a tournament in Florida that they would go to. All of these different things that they would do. And it was different than going someplace and playing a 3-game series or going to this place and playing a 3-game series. That just wasn't what they did. And so this is a bit of an adjustment for Notre Dame and their scheduling and the way that they're doing this because they've never really done it this way before. So now that they're getting into ACC play, they're going to be doing it more normal and what the kids are used to, right? You got a 3-game series on the weekend. You got 1, maybe 2 games during the week, your midweek games, and then you've got another 3-game series on the weekend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of get into a groove with the way things go. And I think that'll be more conducive to what Notre Dame is used to, as opposed to all these 3-game sets that they've been doing during the preseason. So it's different scheduling wise than what they've ever done in the past. And so now that they get into ACC season, it's going to be more interesting to see how things go with this team. I'll have a much better read in a couple of weeks on who this team is.
I'll just say real quickly, I have no idea what you just said, obviously, but okay. I'm a bit discouraged by a couple things. All we have to go on right now is stat sheets, especially like I'm still doing basketball. It's not like we've laid eyes on this team, but looking at results and what they're doing, they've got a 179 team batting average through 9 games. Even in a sabermetrics driven era, that is not good. The team on base percentage is below 300. The team slugging percentage is 283. The defense has been fairly decent. But like as a team, 30 strikeouts and 84 walks. So it's almost a 3-to-1 strikeout to walk. As I'm not talking about the pitchers. I'm still talking about the hitters. Like last year's team was 2-to-1. Now, again, it's still early, but still, that's like just the things that Link Jarrett taught these guys. Like the approach is different. We know that. How different, I don't know. But the other thing that stands out, they've already been hit by pitch 19 times.
Woo!
And like I realize you go, well, they've been hit by what difference is that? In college baseball, guys don't mind wearing a few balls and because you get on base.
Yeah.
Brooks Cutsey is leading the team with 8 hit by pitch right now, and the team has 19. So that's part of on base percentage. You get on base, you don't mind. The bullpen has been pretty good. Like Jack Findlay, I thought would be part of the starting rotation this year. He is still working out of the bullpen, freshman All-American last year. So like I don't know. Like you look at those numbers, and they are definitely not the numbers you would want to see for your offense, especially you open ACC play. They're going to Georgia Tech this weekend to open conference play. So
it's where the rubber meets the road. You know what I mean? Like
you win, I mean, you win 2 out of 3 every weekend in the ACC. Okay, now you're in pretty good shape. But like winning 2 out of 3 with the schedule that they played already, 1 they didn't even do that. 2,
right.
It's again like we've seen Notre Dame teams start slow before, but lack of offensive numbers is what stands out to me right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. And the bats are going to be the last thing to come around, obviously, early in the season. The problem with college is it's a short season. Like it's just like high school.
Well,
like our bats were coming around at the end of the season.
But other teams are hitting though.
Absolutely.
They're in those cages.
Right.
They're inside in those cages. You can still swing the bat.
No. You're right. You're absolutely right.
So we'll see. I guess. Vince, you want to try it for some rapid fire?
I think it's time. I think the gods are telling us that we need to hit this sooner than later.
I know. Let's start with this question from Benjamin. What are you looking forward to most about the upcoming football season?
Points. Like, I'm looking forward to points. Like, I really enjoyed the Gator Bowl because Notre Dame's offense was scoring points. And I realized, half the offensive staff is turned over and blah, 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 blah. A bunch of these guys are back. I love the offensive roster. I really do. I know the guys did a show about this. I didn't watch any of it because I was working. But I know the guys did a show about how excited they are for the offense and the roster and all of those different things. I am. Like, that is by far what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, there's question marks on the defensive side. But if Notre Dame can average 40 points a game, I don't care. Like, they're going to be outscoring teams, and it's going to be just fine. So I can't wait for the fireworks offensively.
Yeah, I think that's it for me as well. I think that with all they've got, between Hartman transferring in, and even, whether it's Tyler Buckner out there at times as well, but with what they've got at the skill positions, I think we're going to see a lot different looking offense this year. And that's for sure what I'm looking forward to as well.
And I don't care how they score those points. Bombs, short stuff, running the ball. I want to see the scoreboard just light up. Throw some fireworks behind the big screen. Let's get this thing rocking. Let's make Notre Dame Stadium a party place with just, score after score after score. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah. On the subject of Notre Dame football, which we obviously talk a lot about here, does Notre Dame hiring Gino Guidugli and Joe Rudolph outweigh losing Brian Mason?
Man, no, I sell that. I don't think that I know that wasn't a buy or sell, but I'm still selling it.
It's still, yeah.
It does not outweigh getting rid of Brian Mason. I think Brian Mason might have been your MVP coach from last year. And at the top of the show, I talked about, I don't know if Brian Mason is going to have a great second season at Notre Dame. He had his first season. That was a lot to live up to if he was still sticking around. And I think that's a legit statement to make. But losing him was the first time I was like, dang, that stinks. I was looking forward to the special teams second act, this year and what Brian Mason was going to be able to do. So I don't think it does outweigh it. I think losing Brian Mason is a tough loss. It just is. And apparently Sean is gone again. And so I am interested. I wanted to hear what Sean had to say about this whole situation, about, what if it outweighs or not, because he's the one that comes up with these questions. And so I was wondering if he was leaning one way or the other based on the fact that he came up with this question and, Gino Guidugli and Rudolph and all of these different things. I was curious to see where he came, and if he's not as big of a Brian Mason fan as I was, I'm not 100% sure. But for me, losing Brian Mason is tough. I mean, he used his 1 year at Notre Dame to his absolute benefit. I mean, like I said, the second act of him leaving, of him coming back to Notre Dame, I don't know if he could have lived up to his first one. I don't know. So we'll see. We shall see. Okay. You know what? I'm going to wait a couple more seconds, see if Sean comes back, but then I'll throw the questions out to everybody else and we'll have some fun with this thing. We'll see how it goes. Anthony wants to be a part of the show. I'm cool with it, man. Bring it on. We're going to do we're going to finish off this thing together and we're going to have some fun with it. So next question, fill in the blank. Okay. Or fill in the blanks. It's multiple blanks here. Notre Dame men's basketball. He's back. I hear him.
Can you hear me?
I can. Woo!
Okay.
I'm about to go to the next question, but I want your answer for the first one.
I unplugged my regular microphone, so
okay.
I'm just using the computer microphone now. So hopefully that helps. Who the hell knows?
I can hear you. I can hear you. We're good.
Whatever. What question were we on, Vince?
Well, the first one about the outweighing with Rudolph and Guidugli outweighing the loss of Brian Mason. I was curious to see where you wanted
Guidugli and Rudolph.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree with the gist of what you're saying. I mean, you're still losing. You gain two quality coaches in Guidugli and Rudolph, but I don't think that they outweigh or offset what you're losing in Brian Mason, because Brian Mason proved in a very short amount of time that he wasn't just a good special teams coach. He was an elite special teams coach. That's why he went from Cincinnati to Notre Dame to the NFL in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So while you're still gaining two quality offensive assistant coaches in Guidugli and Rudolph, I don't think that they outweigh losing Mason because of the impact that he had in a short amount of time. Again, just like what we talked about earlier and what I think you said before I disconnected again, is I would have liked to seen him here a couple more years and see if he's able to sustain it. Like Jesse and I were talking yesterday, no one expects you to block 7 kicks in a year, but if you end up 2, 3, 4 a year consistently, that's still pretty acceptable.
Yeah.
And then, like in your big years, if you're up there around 7, 8, 9, you're obviously going to take that as well. So I think he's going to be a big loss, and there are big shoes to fill in replacing Brian Mason.
Well, and I'm also curious to see, like, USC basically, game planned around how good Brian Mason's special teams were, right? The quarterback was kicking and, all of these different things.
Stayed away from him. Yeah.
How does Brian Mason then respond to that, right? Because that teams were going to copy that, or they were, just like the NFL is a copycat league, so is college football, right? Football in general. So how would he combat that? What would his response be? Those are the kind of things that I was interested in seeing this year.
Interesting. Salty says I sound better. Great. So really, so should I just throw this like through the window, or like what?
It's a different
What am
sound.
I to do?
It's a different sound.
Okay.
It's not as crisp, but it's different. It's not bad.
All right. Fill in the blanks, plural. Notre Dame men's basketball opens ACC tournament play tonight against Virginia Tech. It would be blank if they win 2 games to advance to the tournament quarterfinals, and blank if they win 3 games and make it to the semifinals Friday night.
It would be surprising if they won 2 games. It would be miraculous if they made it to Friday, because that would mean that they had to win. How many was it for the second one? 3, 4?
3. They've got to win 3 games to get to the semifinals.
Which means they would have to double their current ACC win total.
Yeah, that's right.
So that would be a miracle if that actually took place. An absolute miracle.
Yeah, and I think to me it would be a fluke if they beat Virginia Tech tonight. Do I think they could beat Virginia Tech? Sure, but miracle is the exact word that I had to get to Friday. To win 3 games to get to the semifinals, because Notre Dame is the number 14 seed to begin with. Virginia Tech is the 11 seed. And, they won. Virginia Tech only won by 6. They scored a ton of points, though. A 93-87 game in Notre Dame's 0-for-7 February that they had. But they lost all but one of those 7 games in February by single digits. So they were in games, but they, couldn't punch through. NC State is who that they would have to play next. They're the 6th seed. Obviously, it's going to get a little bit better every time. They only beat the Irish by 3 in January, but then they would get the number 3 seed Clemson in the quarterfinals, and Clemson just got done just pasting them over the weekend. So they've been in a lot of games, haven't been able to push through. I've been there before myself, and it sucks. But, by this time of year, I think that you are pretty much what you are. And unfortunately, I think they're more likely to lead a game by 10 and then end up losing than they are to make any kind of run like that to win. Like if they win tonight, that's almost all you can ask for from this team at this point. Anything else is gravy, but like I realize again, it's a little bit apples to oranges, but Washington State in the Pac-12 tournament, in the women's tournament, they were the number 7 seed, and they ended up winning the whole thing last weekend.
That's true.
Beat a bunch of ranked teams along the way. So I guess crazier things have happened, but I think miracle is the right word for getting to the semifinals.
So I feel like I've got the game on right now, and I turned it on. I wanted to see where they were at. They're supposed to start at 7. They're kind of tipping off here in about a minute. And I was kind of hoping Mike Brea is going to bring back the mock turtleneck. It's probably the last game he's ever going to coach at Notre Dame.
That actually should have brought back a little sweet luck if he had gone mock turtle in a sports coat, just like those
absolutely.
Years.
But he decided to go with the quarter zip. But so I have to say I'm a little disappointed in his outfit choice.
Yeah, well, the mock was basically telling us all along, I really want to be able to wear quarter zips, and he just never went the quarter zip route. And it's like he should have just been taking style advice from Bob Huggins all along, I think. So
yeah.
All right, Chicago Bears general manager Ryan Poles is confident he can get first-round picks in both 2024 and 2025 in exchange for the Bears' number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. The Colts are one of the teams, of course, in desperate need of a franchise quarterback. They're sitting there at number 4. Would you want your team to give up that kind of draft stock to move up 3 spots to the top of this year's draft? Like we're talking this year's draft specifically.
Right. My team did do that. The Bears.
That's right. They moved up one spot though, didn't they?
Well, they gave up like their entire draft to get the pass rusher from the Raiders.
Khalil Mack.
Yes, thank you very much. Khalil Mack. They like gave away like their number ones for the next 2 years. Now, he was awesome. He was really, really good, but
Right.
they had no offense to back up what he was doing. So they had an incomplete roster because they had no first round picks.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I mean, I guess if of course there's no guarantees. So this is going to sound ridiculous. I was going to say, if you can guarantee you're going to get an actual franchise quarterback, then yes, you absolutely do that. But there's no guarantees that that's the case. And I'm not convinced that there's a franchise quarterback in this draft. And so I would be real happy that if the Bears would do that, absolutely. Accumulate those draft picks, man. But I would not give them up to get the franchise quarterback. I wouldn't.
Yeah. And that's because, like, when you look at, I totally agree. Like, I'm not sold enough. It's
Right.
not like you've got, like, it's not like the Peyton Manning Ryan Leaf draft, where, like, at
Right.
least going into that draft, you know, Leaf obviously turned out to be a bust, but there were a lot of people who thought Leaf was going to be the guy and not Peyton Manning. Like, you don't have those two type of guys
Right.
in this draft. So I could see giving up this year's number one and next year's, but the next 2 years for what you're getting in return, it's really a roll of the dice. So I would not want to give that up because, you know, like, teams, the way teams approach the quarterback now, it's a lot more disposable, like even in the first round than it has been before, because once they get to that second contract, the money that you've got to pay them. So they're more willing to just cut bait, you know, like look at the Jets, you know, drafted quarterbacks high in the first round, you know, just a couple of years apart, and they moved on and got what they could. You're giving up the next 2 years of first round picks, so you have to be really confident in what you're getting. And so, like, I agree. Like, if my team was the Bears and they stood to get those, of course I would want them to get those kind of picks in return. But if I'm the one that's got to move up, I would not want my team to do that because I'm just not sold enough on any of these guys.
Sell. Like, that is not smart.
Yes. NCAA's Rules Committee has recommended the adoption of some new rules changes for the upcoming season. Now, these still have to be approved, but this is the Rules Committee that has recommended them to be approved down the line within the next couple of months here. But the biggest change is something that we've talked about, the running clock after first downs. Like, now they stop the clock on first downs in college. They have recommended that you go to a running clock like the NFL does, with the exception of the last 2 minutes of each half. So you get under 2 minutes in the half, and then the clock would stop after a first down. Do you buy or sell this potential change for college football?
I actually buy it. And normally I am a sell changing the rules kind of guy. Like, I'm just a curmudgeon old school guy. But in this particular case, for 3/4 of the game, more than 3/4 of the game, you don't need to stop the clock after a first down. You just don't. I would be happy with the fact that they would, at the last 2 minutes or the last 4 minutes or the last whatever, you know, and pick your time. I don't really necessarily even care what it is. But so at least you have the last, like, drive, maybe 2 drives where the clock is stopping.
Right.
That's fine. The rest of the game, that is a great way to speed things up a little bit. That's useless time. That is useless time. Run it. I'm fine with it.
I agree. Especially, like, they were talking about, there were proposals to stop it on out of bounds plays, and, you know, or keep the clock running on out of bounds plays. Remember, as soon as the ball was spotted, I did not like that. I like this because, again, you need to speed things up again. You already have the fact that there are so many instant replays in college football. I think this helps keep the game moving a little bit, but at the same time, you know, under 2 minutes of the half, your 2 minute drills and that kind of thing, then the clock would stop in those situations. So I like that. And part of the goal, part of the things that they're shooting for here is to eliminate some plays over the course of the game because the college football playoff is going to be expanding in a few years, and they're talking about wear and tear on the bodies and all that kind of stuff. So they're trying to eliminate some plays from the game. We know that it works in the NFL. I see no reason not to do it in college football as well.
Yep, I agree completely.
All right. So the SEC is looking at the possibility of playing a 9-game conference schedule with no divisions once Oklahoma and Texas join the conference next year. If they do that, they would play 3 permanent rivals every year and rotate the other 6 opponents. Alabama's 3 perennial teams would be LSU, Auburn, and Tennessee. So Nick Saban, of course, he's not happy with that. He says, quote, "If you play more games, I think you have to get the 3 fixed opponents right. They're giving us Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU. I don't know how they come to that decision." End quote. So are Nick Saban's comments fair or foul, Vince?
They're foul because 5 years ago, he would have been super happy playing Tennessee because they stunk.
Exactly.
It's completely
because
foul.
They happen to be good. He's all
right.
Crying about it.
Like, suck it up, dude. Like, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, you're going to have to play decent teams. You can't always play the Citadel and Northeast West Miami State. Like, you're going to have to play some tough teams. Sorry, dude. I have no problem with it. It's completely out of bounds for Nick Saban to not be happy with that. Auburn is your rival, right?
Right.
And Tennessee, okay, they're up and down. Yeah, they're up right now, but they're up and down. And, LSU, are they going to be up here forever? Probably not, if we're being honest. So, yeah, stop it, dude. Just play the schedule that you're given.
Yeah, I mean, you're Nick Saban. You're at Alabama. You've won 7 national championships. Why do guys like Saban and Gino Auriemma, who've dominated their sports, always whine every time somebody wants to move their cheese a little bit?
Right.
Like it's always the guys at the top, who are getting their feathers ruffled, and they're the ones who have had the most success. It's like, suck it up, put on your big boy pants now, because just what you said, things are going to change over time. One, Auburn is your biggest rival. Like you said, they're not good every year. Tennessee, basically for the last 20 years until the last couple of years, they weren't very good. It's just that Tennessee happens to be good right now, so he's upset about it.
Of course.
And LSU, Alabama is a ratings bonanza, and it's not the level of Auburn, obviously, but it's still a pretty big rivalry in the SEC. You don't want that, rotated, like every 5 or 6 years or something like that. You need to play LSU with some regularity, and like, who does he want to replace Tennessee with? I'm sure he would want Vanderbilt on there.
Of course he would.
So
of course Vanderbilt,
like,
Missouri, and whoever. Like, no,
that's
dude.
Right. That's right. Like when Mike, like speaking of, when Mike Bray got to Notre Dame when they were still in the Big East, he had to play UConn twice every year. Why? Because right. Notre Dame is a brand product. And this is when UConn was still, top 10 team, even number 1, winning national championships. Like, Notre Dame had to suck it up for the good of TV ratings, basically. Even though, Bray's program was decent, but they weren't at that level. They won some of those games,
right.
But it's like, sometimes you got to pay the price because you're the cash cow, and the matchups that you play are going to be cash cows. That's like you said, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're at the top of the heap. You got to do it. You got to suck it up sometimes.
Right. And do you think those other teams are happy they get to play Alabama every year? Probably not.
Right.
Despite what Brian Kelly said about how he wants to play the best of the best. Well, if that's the case, BK, then I want to see your out of conference schedule get a little bit more beefed up before you start telling me you want to play the best of the best. Like, come on, man. Like, that is. I was actually surprised I didn't see that one in a question.
And I was actually surprised that they don't have Arkansas, LSU as part of their fixed rotate, because I always thought that was like a big kind of rivalry game, because Louisiana and LSU are, or Louisiana and LSU. Arkansas is just north, of it's adjoining with Louisiana. Just that used to be one of those rivalry games that they played the day after Thanksgiving all the time,
right?
Until that went away. But yeah. So, but that's not going to be part of LSU's rotation. So,
I mean, right now their non-conference is Georgia State, Army. Let's see here, Grambling, and Florida State. Like those are their 4 non-conference games right now.
Yeah.
Like really, best of the best, BK. Come on, man.
Exactly. So Rich Eisen said on his radio show that he's heard Tom Brady could unretire for a second straight year. Do you buy or sell Brady coming out of retirement again?
I started that rumor, and I'm glad that Rich Eisen was able to pick up on it. No, I sell it completely. I'm good with Tom Brady being where he's at. He doesn't need to be playing anymore. There's nothing really he can do to his legacy to make it, negative or anything. I don't think at this point. But if last year's any indication, like, dude, it's time to hang it up. I mean, it's time. You are no longer able to put a team on your shoulders and will them to the Super Bowl. Like that time is gone, in my opinion. It's okay to ride off into the sunset, man. It's okay. Sell.
Update to this, by the way.
Uh-oh.
I sent you this question, obviously, earlier in the day. And then about an hour before this show started, I saw Tom Brady retweeted a reporter's tweet about this. And here's what Brady's tweet said.
Goodness.
In reference to this subject. Anyone who thinks I have the time to come back to the NFL has never adopted a 2-month-old kitten for their daughter.
Wow. That's hilarious. You know what? Good on Tom Brady. That is a hilarious response.
That's right. I agree with everything you said. Like, apparently this time, by the way, he filed the paperwork, retirement paperwork and all this stuff. He didn't do that last year.
Gotcha.
So, he's already gone a lot farther. And, I mean, adopting the kitten just puts it over the top, basically.
That's great.
So,
that's great.
That's
that
right.
is funny.
So, that's Rich Eisen said that's what he was hearing at the Combine, that was like one of the big rumors that came up. But Tom Brady's also already shot it down. So
you know what? One of the other big.
It's like
yeah.
That's what like when he pushed back the broadcasting thing for a year. It's like, oh man, you're leaving yourself wiggle room. Sure. It could happen, but
you know what? One of the other big rumors at the Combine was that Michael Mayer is not a good tight end. So the rumors at the Combine are garbage. That's the way I look at it right now.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. I made my Jason Witten comparison the last couple shows.
Yeah.
My Jason Witten comp, and that's like a big thing going on in Dallas right now. Like, Cowboys fans are panicked that they might actually draft Michael Mayer with the 26th pick in the draft.
Why are they panicked?
Jason Witten, because they want somebody other than a tight end.
Oh, you don't want like the best security blanket possible for Dak Prescott?
Yeah, they're like fawning over these 2, rookie projects that they drafted last year, and they think that that's suitable. You don't want an elite tight end. You take a couple guys you put together in a back room someplace. So
come on now, come on.
I'm on record. Like I would love it if that's who they get.
Look, I love Cole Kmet.
I mean, there are other needs. Don't get me wrong.
Right,
just like every team. But I would love it.
Absolutely. Look. What I heard somebody say something the other day, whatever team Michael Mayer ends up getting drafted to, their offense automatically got better. Period. Like, and there's no argument that you can give me that will convince me otherwise. None.
Right.
He's a starter walking in the door.
He
makes
plug
your
and
offense
play
better.
guy.
Yes.
Day one.
Yes. No doubt.
Because the biggest thing with him is, he's not just running away from guys, running down, he understands concepts.
Yes.
And he understands the spots in the defense. He understands how to get open. And he also obviously can fight for those 50-50 balls and, combated catches and stuff like that, as they've talked about. So I think he's a guy that you drop right in on day one and completely agree with what you're saying. Your offense is automatically going to get better. All right. Well, we made it through at the end after ditching the microphone. My headphone setup is a little bit different without them, but
I bet
we made it through. Hit the like button if you would. Appreciate you stopping by tonight. Don't forget, no show tomorrow because we'll be over at Notre Dame doing all those offensive interviews, including Sam Hartman, Gino Guidugli, Joe Rudolph, and others as well. And then we'll have some audio from some of those guys on Thursday's show when Vince and I are back. So talk to you then.
Wait. Yes, sir. I'll be there. I'm excited. Woo!
Sounds good. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.